Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast in 5 minutes.
Mourir, c'est un beau jour pour mourir, mes yeux bleus dans tes yeux noirs. C'est un beau jour pour mourir, ni espoir ni désespoir. Si on s'aime pas, qui nous aimera? Si on s'aime pas, qui nous aimera? It's a pretty day to die, my blue eyes in your black eyes. It's a pretty way to die, it's a pretty way to lie. Mes yeux bleus dans tes yeux noirs, c'est un beau jour pour mourir. C'est un beau jour pour mourir, c'est un beau jour pour mourir. Je suis armée jusqu'aux dents, plein d'amour pour mon amant. Dormir dans tes yeux longtemps, dormir dans tes yeux longtemps. It's a pretty day to die, my blue eyes in your black eyes. It's a pretty way to die, it's a pretty way to lie.
Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast in 4 minutes.
Mes yeux bleus dans tes yeux noirs, c'est un beau jour pour mourir. C'est un beau jour pour mourir, mes yeux bleus dans tes yeux noirs. C'est un beau jour pour mourir, ni espoir ni désespoir. Si on s'aime pas, qui nous aimera? Si on s'aime pas, qui nous aimera? It's a pretty day to die, my blue eyes in your black eyes. It's a pretty way to die, it's a pretty way to lie.
Hello, Chaz.
Hola.
Mes yeux bleus dans tes yeux noirs, c'est un beau jour pour mourir. C'est un beau jour pour mourir.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Cool.
I always love what Aaron plays before the show. It's the weirdest shit in the world.
I heard it last week.
Yeah. Like it's like some French lady talking about pretty day to die and black eyes. She must have an abusive boyfriend.
Mostly.
Stored on the shelves of my memory. My thoughts are in perfect array. My life runs smooth like a highway. Billboards show me the way.
So I heard an interesting rumor. Is Robinson moving to Vietnam?
Robinson's been moving to Vietnam for the last, 5 years. So, and he also wants to blame the fact that he can't get on the Hangout on me.
Mm.
He was telling me, I've been on having conversations with multiple people all night long, and this is the only problem that I've had. I'm like, no, you're right, Robinson. It's me. I'm intentionally creating problems. Dumbass. So, I'm not sure, but it looks like, from the looks of the sexy blue silhouette, that our lovely guest that we're going to refer to as Angie for the evening is on the Hangout with us right now. If you can hear us, say hello.
Hello.
Oh, wow!
Ah.
Look at that. So, quick introduction before we start the broadcast.
Okay.
The other gentleman in the video, in the dark video, that's Chaz. He is one of the co-hosts. Say hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So, Miss Angie has been kind enough to join us for the show this evening. It is now midnight. We're going to get this party started. If Robinson gets on, fantastic. If he doesn't, it won't be the first time. So, let us start this lovely thing we call the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast.
Let's do it.
And I've learned my lesson about starting too soon, Chaz. I let the bumper music run a little bit and cross our fingers that we're actually on the radio.
Robinson says that you've blocked him.
I've blocked him.
That's what he says.
That's funny. I've blocked him. All right, well, is there the possibility, Chaz, that you can check to see if we're actually live so that I can start this show?
1 second.
Thank you, sir. All right. Watch how this works. Welcome to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. I am your host. We are coming to you live from radiovalencia.fm and all around the world. You can watch us on YouTube. I promise. Chaz is currently away from his microphone. Robinson is yelling at me, telling me that I have blocked him from our own radio show. And things couldn't be more fun, ladies and gentlemen. And now Chaz sounds like he's crumpling up giant pieces of metallic paper. But it wouldn't be the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast if we weren't having technical difficulties. So we decided a long time ago that technical difficulties are the fourth host of this show. So, Robinson, if you hear any dinks in the background, it is Robinson yelling at me. Enough with the dinks.
Yes.
Chaz. We know we have Vietnamese listeners, and I just can't help myself. So, Robinson says that he's blocked. Chaz, for the time being, will you please say hello to these lovely people?
Hello, lovely people.
So, while I try to unblock my best friend Robinson from his own radio show, I for the life of me couldn't tell you how I would have even done that, because contrary to popular belief, some might call me technically proficient, but when it comes to Google services, I would consider myself pretty ignorant. See, do you hear the dinks? And now he's just getting frustrated. He's getting mad. I can tell by the shortness of his statements, right? Everything was working fine before. God damn it. Let's try to send him an invitation one more. Maybe we could send an invitation to a different profile. That could work because he probably just got himself banned from the internet.
Is he still in Vietnam?
No, I don't think so. I think he's home. So he probably got banned from the internet. Lord knows the very seedy websites this man frequents. So you made a face. That's exactly the face that's appropriate for the type of websites we're referring to right now. So let's. I'll continue to work on this, but first and foremost, you are listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast live on radiovalencia.fm and SoberHappyHour.com. Well, I guess kind of SoberHappyHour.com. In reality, you can catch the podcast at SoberHappyHour.com. You can catch the live video stream of this show every single week at YouTube gmail.com/soberhappyhour, or just do a search for soberhappyhour@gmail.com. You can also follow us, like us on Facebook, Twitter. We don't have an Instagram because I don't consider either of us all that attractive, so taking selfies and posting them on the internet, I'm not exactly sure that anyone would be all that interested in looking at that. So Robinson's still angry. Now I just have a big WTF with 4 question marks.
Yep.
I don't know what to tell him. If all right, if anybody out in internet land is listening to this broadcast and knows how to use Google Hangouts, please send me an email, soberhappyhour@gmail.com, so that we can unblock Robinson from whatever the hell he thinks he's blocked from. Because I can't stop the show in the middle of the show. It's a live show. So let's see. I'm going to try one more time to settings. Nope. See? I don't know how to block anybody. He was on before. So maybe, you know what it might have been? It might be that the Hangout doesn't think he has anything worthwhile to contribute to the show this evening. So it's just saying, hey, fuck that guy. I'm going to send him a message. Say, I don't know what to tell you, comma, friend. If I blocked you, it certainly was not on purpose, and I don't see any way to unblock you. Sad face. All right. Ooh, that sad face is creepy. It looks like a smushed blob of sadness. All right, so we already did the intro. We already said hello. Chaz already said hello. Normally we start the show and we discuss a topic. The topic of conversation for a whopping 2 hours every Saturday night, Sunday morning from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. This evening is going to be a little bit different, Chaz.
Different yet again?
Yes, different not because we're dealing with communist Vietnam, but different because we have. Now, this statement will be a little disingenuous, and I don't want you, Chaz, to get your feelings hurt. So I preface this. All right? Are you ready? All right.
I'm ready.
So I'm going to say this, and it's not entirely true. But we have our very first live guest on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast this evening, who will be joining us here in just a moment. If you've heard adorable giggling thus far throughout the show, Chaz is not throwing his voice. Robinson did not get a Vietnamese sex change. Our guest is already on the line with us, but until we get this Robinson situation figured out, I'm kind of giving her the opportunity to just kind of get a feel for things. I hope now our guest understands that this show is not as serious as it may seem. People think, oh, a live radio show, and they go, oh, man, that's scary, I'm nervous. Nobody's listening. I think that's the most important thing to remember. Right here on the screen, it tells you how many viewers we have on YouTube. We have 0 viewers, which means we're literally just talking to ourselves right now. Now,
but
that
at any moment, we could be broadcast live in Times Square.
I was just thinking that. Isn't that weird?
It is bizarre.
All right,
we're out there.
And we are out there, and we did get our very first nasty comment on YouTube last week or the week before. It was a brief comment on the posted Hangout broadcast thing, whatever you want to call it. There was a comment after it posted, and once it posts, people can go back and watch it. Why anyone would do this, Chaz, I for the life of me, I mean, I'm sitting on a chair in front of a door a dog bed, and
A bunch of
ET.
beef jerky.
Beef jerky rigs and ET doll. You see the ET doll right there? That's ET.
Mm-hmm.
So why anybody would want to watch this show, I don't know. But we did get our very first comment, and I wanted to share that comment with all of our listeners. So if you would indulge me for just one moment, here we go. So this was a comment from the end of May, and it was our show that we did with the last show that we did with Robinson completely. So sometime in May. And here's the comment. It's from an anonymous user, and the comment reads like this. Here we go. Fags.
The internet called me a fag.
That's the whole comment. That's all it said. FAGS exclamation point. So we appreciate that, anonymous Google user. I don't know. So apparently they think we're gay for each other, Chaz. What can I say?
Obviously.
3 guys chatting on the internet in the middle of the night with video cameras turned on. I could see where this is coming from. Ooh, he sent me a picture. Robinson sent me a picture. Let's click on it. What does it say? It says, "You are not allowed to join this video call." Interesting. That kind of hurts my feelings a little bit, video call. I invited Robinson out of love and adoration, and it won't let him join. All right, we'll try to invite him one more time. All right, click the new link, goddammit. Maybe he's clicking on like an old expired link. Wouldn't that be funny?
Mm-hmm. That'd be hilarious.
Find the newest link to click. So, Angie, this is exactly how this show goes every single week. I don't want you to think that this is an unprofessional experience that you're having right now. It is unprofessional like this every single week. So don't feel like because of your presence, the show has just gone off the rails. This show does not have rails to begin with.
No.
But that's okay because our listeners live in San Francisco. And they're used to weird stuff. I speak from experience. So why don't we do this? Robinson is still having trouble getting on the broadcast. He may just need to quit his stuff and try to get back on another time. I don't know what to tell him. But
can he call in by voice?
That sounds complicated.
No.
What do you mean?
Well, like, you know how there's video call, there's this call, there's that call. Can you call by voice?
Why does he have a green dot next to him? That's weird, huh? So, I would say, why don't we just get this party started? What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right. So, I'm ready to do it. Friends, family, acquaintances. I can't deal with the dink sound. That's going to drive me crazy. Cancel. See, yeah, something's broken. All right. I'm not going to mess with this anymore. So, this is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. Thank you very much for listening. We are trying to work out getting our third and most delicious host back on the program, but he's struggling with his technology. And I'll be honest, I give him a lot of credit because when you're 104 years old, technology is not the easiest thing in the world to use. It can be a little it can be a little overwhelming. I know plenty of people in the line of work that I am in. They come in when they're from that golden generation. They have trouble with technology. So, Robinson, we applaud you for your tenacious attempt at getting on this show. But it's broken, and I don't know how to fix it. So, the show must go on, Chaz. How was your weekend? How was your week, Chaz?
Week
I heard
was
you hurt yourself.
hurt myself today. Nah, it was let's just say this. When you feel like you're losing your mind is the last thing you want to use to try and basically bring yourself back.
Okay.
Yeah, had a little episode where I did believe that I was actually going crazy. Good thing is, I found out I wasn't. It actually is my boss that has literally lost touch with all of reality.
Your boss.
And that she is so adept at, convincing you are wrong that, yeah, it didn't go well.
Fair enough. So, I apologize that you didn't have a great week, Chaz.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So, what I'd like to do is, I think we've wasted enough time trying to get Robinson back on the show. Hopefully, he figures it out, and halfway through the show tonight, we just hear some blasted, blaring echo of him showing up on the broadcast. But we did the best that we could. So, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our friend, friend of mine, friend of the show. For the sake of everybody's anonymity, if you will, we're going to protect our guest's identity, and we're going to. I wanted to use a silly name, I couldn't think of anything though on the fly, so we're gonna call our guest Angie, and I'm gonna do my best to not make up a different name halfway through the broadcast. I even wrote it down on a piece of paper in front of me, Angie, so that I don't accidentally call her Allison halfway through the show and everybody gets confused. So we'll take a quick moment and. Thank you for joining the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast, Angie. Will you say hello to Chaz?
Hi, Chaz. And thank you for having me.
Oh, of course.
You're very welcome.
So I was going to say earlier that Angie is the very first guest that we have had on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. And the reason that I prefaced that with an apology to Chaz was that before Chaz was a co-host of this show, Chaz was the very first guest on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. So to say that you are the first is true and yet not true at the very same time. So thank you so much for being on the program this evening. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and being up in the middle of the freaking night and doing this with us. We truly, honestly, really appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm very excited.
Well, we are
wanted
excited
to be on a
too.
radio show.
I know, right? Isn't that exciting? Even though nobody's watching the YouTube, like I was telling you before, it is very possible that there could be tens of dozens of people listening live on terrestrial radio, on internet radio, Radio Valencia's app, and Radio Valencia's website. So there could be upwards of 13 or 15 people listening right now. Because we never honestly know. We like to tell ourselves that there's at least a few thousand people listening at any given moment so that we don't do anything too stupid to embarrass ourselves, but we never honestly know. We know that lots of people listen to the podcast, but thankfully with a podcast I can edit out my stupidity so people don't have to be subjected to it that often. So I can't say it enough, thank you for being on the show. What we wanted to do was try to make it as easy for you as possible to tell the story that you've come on to tell. I was very intrigued by the story that you've shared with me. Our guest tonight comes to us with experience on both sides of the coin with regards to addiction, recovery, and the what we call the anon side of addiction and recovery. So both experience with experimentation in drugs and partying, and dealing with family members who have had issues with drugs and alcohol. And that was, I think, what was most intriguing about your story, Angie, was you've seen both sides of this, and not everybody can say that they have, and certainly not everybody can come out on the other side relatively unscathed. So if you would be so kind, let's start at the beginning, with kind of what you shared with me early on. Okay, instead of starting at the beginning, I'd like to start in the middle, because what I'm most intrigued by is the story about your parents. So,
Okay.
however you'd like to start, I'm most curious about what you know about your parents' drug and alcohol abuse that was going on while you were younger that you found out about later in your life.
All right. So my parents were pretty young when they had me. My mom was about 18, and my dad was about 19. So, I mean, they were still kids themselves trying to raise a kid. That's not something easy to do. And I recall my parents fighting a lot when they were married. They didn't stay married very long, probably divorced when I was about 7. And then I started noticing really weird behaviors that to me seemed normal. But when I would be with my friends and I would hang out with their families, it made my life seem very chaotic. My parents would scream and yell and fight at each other, and one day my mom would be happy, and then an hour later she'd just be really upset and she'd be yelling, and it's very unpleasant to be around. I also remember her staying up a lot for some reason. She was just always up. It was really weird.
So this was happening when you were about what age were you noticing this kind of behavior from your parents?
I started really noticing the mood swings and the eating habits and the sleep schedules when I was about 14.
Got it.
So yeah,
And
so
would you say that the the drug use or drug abuse or whatever you want to refer to it as was present during your younger years, and like you said, you may just not have been aware of it? Or do you think that this was something that came about when you started getting a little bit older, maybe as a coping mechanism for being young parents, or just dealing with, trust me, I'm a parent, it can be a little bit overwhelming to be a parent
yeah.
sometimes? Or do you think this was going on like throughout the entirety of your existence?
No, I think this was something that was going on for a while, definitely before I was born. And I know that for a fact because, as you had said, I did come to terms with what they had been doing, and I actually confronted them about it. And they told me, they said that um, they had been experimenting with cocaine and methamphetamines from the time that I think they said like until the time right after they graduated. So
And do you, if that was right after they graduated, because a lot of parents will, they'll come to this conclusion early on in their parenting that, I have to quit smoking, I have to quit drinking, I have to
hmm
quit partying because I am a parent.
hmm
Do you think that they went through a phase that they maybe tried that but couldn't? Were they, can you say, and maybe you don't know and that's okay too, can you say that your parents were addicted to drugs or alcohol or both, or was it more just a lifestyle choice that they were making?
it just seemed more of like a lifestyle choice. When I discussed this with my mom, she said that she was working 2 jobs and trying to stay awake for both jobs was a little impossible. And having a stimulant like methamphetamines or coke definitely gonna keep you up for those shifts.
Got
So
it.
I can understand where they came from and how having this option might have seemed like a better option, but I don't know, they're different now
Well,
from what I hear.
and I think that would be a wonderful thing to know that they dealt with that. You were able to find the courage to ask questions, and you refer to it as confronting them. Um, why did you feel the need to confront them? If this was something that uh, had been going on for so long, what changed in you that made you feel, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but whether it was obligated or just out
Mhm.
of curiosity, why did you decide to confront them when you did?
Well, it was a very dark time in my life. When I actually came to that decision that I was going to talk to them, there was a lot of stuff that was happening between family members, between my family members and some of the police, and there was a lot of chaos in my house, and that was really hard to deal with. But it wasn't until I started experimenting with drugs and really looking at it in a more observational way, I was noticing how it affected my thought process, my eating habits, how I slept. I was observing my friends in this sense too. So I was reflecting internally on the way that these drugs were affecting me, and I was also able to see that in other people externally.
Did it
And
did it scare you?
it did scare me because it seemed like at that time I had no value for life. Like I didn't care whether I took too much and might have needed to go to the hospital or been in more serious condition. It was just a really it was just a really hard time. I mean, to feel like you don't care to be alive, that in itself is pretty deep. And for me to be going through that with my friends who were also going through a lot of emotional and mental abuse from their families and living situations, it was really easy for all of us to connect. And I had talked to them, and I was telling them all about my observations. And while I was going on about it, just ranting, I was reflecting on my childhood and how I was able to give them examples of the things that I was seeing. And it just kept giving me these images of my parents and their behavior. And what was worse was that I was still seeing that in my mom, those behaviors. It wasn't just something that was remembered anymore. It was something that was still happening in my house. And I mean, by this time, I'm in high school. I'm a senior, and I'm about to go to college the next year, and I feel obligated to take care of my siblings and to make sure that my mom's in the right mental state to take care of them. Because growing up, it was really me taking care of my sisters and my brothers. I mean, my mom was working all the time, so family makes sacrifices and they do what they have to do and they help each other out. And that's the way I've always looked at it. I've never really felt negatively towards my mom for having to work as much as she did, but I don't like the fact that she felt she had to she had to take drugs in order to achieve that.
How many siblings do you have?
I have 8, full, half, and step, but at the time I was living with 5.
And are they all younger than you?
Yes.
Wow. So I can only imagine the amount of responsibility that you felt if you weren't sure that your parents were in a good place, or if you were only living with your mother at the time, if you didn't feel like she would be capable of taking care of them appropriately. I have 2 younger sisters, and I know that how that sense of responsibility feels to protect them and to take care of them. What was the hardest part about realizing that your mother might have been in the midst of a problem and some bad decisions with regards to drugs? What was the thing that was weighing on you the most about that? Was it her health, or the safety and security of your siblings, or what did that feel like?
It was definitely her health. I mean, we were just living with my mom. My dad had been out of the picture, and it was just us, the kids, my mom, and her not being around was definitely a huge concern of mine. I was going to be going away to college, and I mean, I can't pause my life to take care of my siblings. That's just not fair to the progress of my life. And it was really hard to think that she was willingly doing this to her body when she is intelligent. So there's no way that she didn't understand the consequences of taking such a substance. And I couldn't believe that she would put her health at such risk when she has a responsibility to take care of these kids.
Yeah.
But I also didn't like that money was tight. Like we didn't have a lot of money, and it was really paycheck to paycheck, and I was working as much as I could to make money to help bring in food and gas and help with things. And for me, I actually found a stash that she had, and that was how I ended up confronting her with it. And it was heartbreaking to see that this is where some of her money's been going.
Sure.
I'm still pretty young myself, and I'm trying to work to help take care of a family. And that was a lot of stress in itself, but even more so seeing her just kind of pass that along to drugs.
Would you say, do you think that there was ever a point in time that what she was doing was affecting her ability to parent you and your siblings? Like, in hindsight, looking back on it now, do you think that there were times that she was around the kids and she was impaired, and maybe whether driving with or etc.?
Absolutely. I mean, being able to see the effects on her mood, how she'd be okay 1 second, then all of a sudden someone says the slightest thing that agitates her, and she just blows up, and she screams and she yells, and my sisters are crying. I mean, there were times where she would get so upset in a fight with me, and I'm not the type to yell back or disrespect my parents, regardless. And I was like on the way to school. I said something back that was just kind of a smart-ass remark, or so it seemed to her. And she reached over and just slapped me in the face, and I couldn't go to school after that. And she was not the aggressive type. And from what my grandparents have said, from the time that she graduated high school was when her personality really changed. And that is when that they started experimenting with things, so it only makes sense.
So, considering how young your parents were when they had you, and you being the oldest, and you already said that you're pretty sure that the use of drugs to whatever extent was already something that was present in their life before they had you. When you got older and realized that this was something that was happening, could you think back to times when you were younger and maybe even a kid that you know now might have been the result of the drug use, like situations like you mentioned, being tight with money, or because I remember growing up poor, right? My family was poor, and it wasn't the result of drug use. It was the result of having a father who made bad financial decisions, right? And I look back on some of those times now, and I say, wow, if different decisions had been made, I might have had different opportunities in my life. And there are times where I look back in anger or regret. But for the most part, I look at those difficulties that I experienced in my life as really what sort of formed the basis for who I am now, and I'm able to look back on it with almost with gratitude. How do you feel now about what you know from back then? Are you angry? Does it make you sad? Is it just something that doesn't mean much to you at this point because it was so long ago? How does it make you feel?
I was never angry at my parents, which was really surprising. Um, I was more hurt and worried about them, but in the long run, I definitely look at the struggles in my life as being something that helped me mature and become the person that I am. And I don't blame my parents because I mean, they were young and we pretty much grew up together, so they were still making mistakes, and I understand that. I mean, I ended up getting into it myself with having no prior knowledge of their use with it, and I don't know.
Do you think it
It's
made you
fascinating.
understand their decisions a little bit better when you found yourself experimenting with drugs?
It did, and I think that's why I didn't feel angry, was because I was experiencing a dark time and I fell into dark substances and just kind of that world. And reflecting on the life that I've had and the struggles that my parents have had to deal with just financially and, I mean, in their relationship, just inner relationship, I can see how they would have fallen into that.
Yeah. Well, and also if it was the result of trying to keep keep afloat financially,
Yeah.
having to make money to survive, and the only way to make money to survive was to work two jobs, and the only way to work two jobs was to use drugs to stay up and not be exhausted, tired. I mean, you almost you almost have to try to understand that, right? It doesn't make it
Yeah.
right, but it you can put yourself in that mentality and say, wow, I couldn't imagine being put in a position where I would think that that was the right decision because all of my other options were bad. So tell me about when the actual confrontation took place and what resulted what was the result of that confrontation? Uh, was it an easy situation? Was it very scary and nerve wracking? Were you uh, confrontational in a way that you were kind of preparing yourself for a fight? Did it turn into a fight? Was it easier than you expected? Was it, tears and sadness and, remorse? Or was it, mind your goddamn business, child, you're out of line? What was that like? Because the reason I ask, we have listeners who reach out to us and they have family members who are dealing with drug and alcohol problems, and they feel like their only option left is to confront this individual that they love and basically say, I know what you're doing. It's not okay. I love you. I care about you. I want to help you, but I'm angry, and you need to know that I'm angry. And they confront, and they reach out to us ahead of time because they want to know what's the best way to go about it. And so I'd love to hear how you went about it and how it worked out and what you would have done differently in hindsight if you could do it all over again.
Yeah. So, with my mom, like I said, I had found her stash, I found her a little bit of supply of some meth, I believe, and a pipe, and it was just like all wrapped up. And I called her out into the garage because I found it in one of our front closets, and I showed it. I just showed her the case. I didn't really open it. I just said, "What is this?" And she looks at me and pretty much what you said, mind your goddamn business. I don't have to explain anything to you. I'm the parent here. You're the child. And I completely ignored that. I so I asked her, "Is it for weed?" Just because, I mean, I don't really see the harm in smoking weed. So I asked her, and I already knew, but she said, "Yeah." And I just looked at her, and the look on my face, I could feel it, was just telling her how upset I was because she knew that I knew she was lying.
Right.
And I said, I can't believe that you're lying to me about this when I have it in my hand. And she just kept apologizing and crying, and it was really emotional. But she said that she was so embarrassed that she didn't want to ever be caught with anything ever again, and she didn't want that to be involved in her life. And between me and her, I thought that was a secret that we were going to keep, and that she was going to get better on her own. I didn't want other people to know. I mean, that's a personal struggle, and sometimes going through things like that, you don't really want anybody to know.
Right.
I didn't want my grandparents to know, or my dad to know. But one of my sisters ended up overhearing and actually told my dad. And then police were involved, and we had a lot of investigations at our house. And they would come to our school, and they would interview us, and
Really?
they would go to they would go to my mom's work, and they would ask her questions there.
So, with the involvement of other members of the family, did you feel like they were trying to help? Uh-oh. Well, and it looks like we may have lost Angie here for a quick second. Hopefully she will reconnect to the broadcast. Really interesting story, and she speaks so eloquently about this situation. And I know that nobody listening knows who this person is personally, but Angie is just such a sweet person, a kind individual, totally unassuming that anything like this would have been, the way that she was brought up, and she can speak so calm and confidently about it that I give her so much credit for the strength that she displays with this. What are your thoughts so far, Chaz?
I was just listening to it. You can tell she's very mature about it, and that, again, like you're saying, the calm that she speaks with about it. She's had a lot of time to reflect on it, and I don't know. It's just interesting, like, visualizing it and seeing it as, a daughter, a child to a mother, confronting like this. When typically, it's such the other way around in so many instances. Yeah, kind of watching it in my head the whole time she was talking through it.
Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe her cell phone battery might have died or something like that.
Yeah, I am definitely stuck to the wall with
right.
my cell phone.
Well, and that's the same thing that happened to Robinson last week. Was he was in the middle of it, and in Vietnam, and wasn't plugged in. And I'm pretty sure Robinson has given up joining the broadcast this evening. I feel bad because I wish that I had done something differently to remove him from our broadcast, but I did not. I have not. You can't blame me. I didn't do anything different. It's all the same. So we'll take a moment here, and how about this? We'll pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast coming to you live from RadioValencia.fm. We are broadcasting remotely from Phoenix and Tempe, Arizona. And I don't know where our guest is in a physical location. I know she's somewhere in Arizona. Robinson was on the broadcast before the broadcast started, and then as soon as the broadcast started, it kicked him out again. So
where was he then?
He was at home, I believe, in Oakland. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but thankfully, knock on wood, our technology seems to be pretty consistent, yours and mine, Chaz. And you want to know why?
Why is that?
You're on an iPhone. I'm on a Mac. I broadcast via a Mac, an iPhone, and an iPad. Robinson is on a Chromebook, and Angie, I know, uses an Android phone. So, very interesting that those with the technical difficulties are using substandard
Non-Apple
devices.
products. Yes.
So, we're still trying to get our guest back on. Thank you for being patient. Very first remote guest. I know that when you were our very first guest, Chaz, you were live in the studio.
Yes, I
Meant that
was.
I had complete control over the situation. When we're broadcasting live and we are broadcasting remotely, there are times when certain circumstances are beyond my control. And if I could control the world, Chaz, I can't say the world would be a better place than it is right now. But at the very least,
we would not be having technical difficulties.
we probably still would, but we'd all have health care. So we unfortunately don't have any backups planned for the show. If our guest doesn't make it back on, we're gonna have to.
Well, you did send me that link to the whole Demi Lovato thingy.
We love our celebrity stories.
Yes.
So did you have a chance to read it?
I read it. I didn't get to watch the video though. Did you?
So yeah, and basically what I really love about it is that she's always been very open about her recovery. And when she relapsed, I don't know whether she was very open about the relapse, but I know that I think it's been about a year now or so that she's been sober again. And this is somebody who's gone back and forth.
She said it was 3 years, actually.
Yeah. So as far as I knew, she was still sober from the previous time. So I didn't know that there had been a relapse in the middle. I know that she had left the X Factor TV show that she was hosting. I know that she was touring. I know that, I could only imagine the pressures involved in being on a television show that has a pretty grueling schedule because it's live, and then also trying to tour and support an album. And I could see very easily that your recovery could start to take a distant third place to other things going on in your life. And what I find most interesting is that here's somebody who makes probably a very good living and still struggles to maintain sobriety. And what I like about it is that that's okay, right? Like, we don't have to hold that against this celebrity person. We don't have to judge negatively and say that she has no willpower and say that she's a bad person. Like, we can say, wow, congratulations that you're standing up and publicly announcing that you are in active recovery and potentially giving hope to the young girls and boys who idolize her. I am a human being. I make mistakes. I own up to those mistakes, and I'm getting better. So
I like that she's dual diagnosed. She has both like bipolar and substance abuse issues.
And I think there's a lot of people like that.
There are, but not out.
Right.
Not very. I mean, to tell the truth, it's like, at least in the system that we work in, it's like 60% of people who are in it are have dual diagnosis, or upwards of 80 almost.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so when you've got celebrities who are open about having the issues of both, it's actually much more realistic.
Well, and I think that there's an equal amount of stigma with like something like bipolar disorder, right? We talk about alcoholism, and we say we almost joke about it, and we say, oh man, I'm an alcoholic. Like I drink so much and I puked all over myself. I'm an alcoholic, and it's funny. And same goes with like people who have bipolar disorder,
Mm-hmm.
right? Oh yeah, man, my girlfriend's crazy. I think she's bipolar, right?
Yeah.
So it's gotten to this point where we make a mockery of these things, and I think that's really unfortunate because then those that truly are diagnosed bipolar or truly
Mm-hmm.
are suffering from alcoholism or drug addiction, it's almost like uh, the Chicken Little story, the sky is falling, right? Or the boy that cried wolf, right? We deal with so many people in our lives that
Yeah.
claim fibromyalgia. We could go there again if you want to. Or
Not really.
they claim bipolar disorder or I'm an addict, and they're not really, so then we start to get desensitized to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is very dangerous. But just the other day, I'm talking to a person who's telling me she's bipolar, she's schizophrenic, she's suicidal, she's a recovering drug addict, and all of these things. And is that true? And here we go. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm certainly not qualified to be a shoulder for you to cry on and try to explain this to you, talk you out of anything crazy that you're thinking about doing. But at the same time, we know that there are a lot of people who use those terms very loosely.
Mhm.
And that's scary sometimes. I think somebody who's going to just walk up to an almost complete stranger and start telling them all of these, psychological diagnoses that they have, I'm wondering, that's probably more a cry for help than it is real.
Well, real cry for help. I mean, otherwise, what are you crying for?
Well, but what
know.
is it? Is it a cry for help or is it an attention grab?
There's easy
Be
ways to find
honest,
out.
Gaz. Don't be so goddamn diplomatic.
There are ways of finding out. There are ways of telling. In other words, if it persists, it's oh my God, it's Robinson.
Holy
Hello.
shit balls!
I solved the mystery.
You didn't solve the mystery.
I
And
solved
Andrew's
the
back,
mystery.
too.
You logged into a different account.
No shit, that was the mystery.
Oh, well, I like your logo. It's mysterious.
Uh-huh.
It looks like your T-shirt. My favorite T-shirt that you wear.
Do you know what that logo represents?
Well, it looks like a very short penis with a piercing.
Really? That's all you could see?
It looks like a frenum piercing on a penis, a red one. Looks like a dog penis coming out of a zebra.
When we saw Angie for a moment there, it looked like she was broadcasting from a closet.
Sad but true.
Are you in a closet?
I am in the closet, folks.
So the nice thing about a closet is that it will dampen the sound of the echo around you. So being in a closet full of
Exactly.
clothing is a nice way to record vocals for an album or to be on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast.
Is that why she sounds so clear?
Probably.
Thank you. I thought ahead.
So what we're gonna do, we're almost through the first hour of the show. Angie got back online. I don't know if her phone died or if she just needed to use the potty. And Robinson finally figured out how to use his computer. And so what we should do, he's flipping me off right now. What we should do, and Robinson, before we do anything, were you able to hear any of the show thus far? Were you tuned in as a listener?
I was for a minute, but as soon as I tried to log in, it cut me off. So
Got it. So just to recap, we have our very first guest on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast. Her name is Angie.
Hello,
So
Angie.
this is
Hello.
Robinson.
Hi,
it's
Robinson.
nice to see you. You're very blue.
Yes, thank you. It's my favorite shade.
Okay.
So we've been talking to Angie about her life living with, unbeknownst to her, living for many, many years with parents who were using and potentially abusing drugs from the time that she was a little tiny baby up until she was a teenager about to leave the house and go to college, and how that realization didn't actually happen until she started experimenting with drugs and realized that some of the behaviors that she was seeing in her friends and in herself that were the result of using drugs were behaviors that she was seeing in her parents all along, and had the courage, I mean, I'll say it for what it is, had the fucking balls to confront her parents about their drug use when she was in her late teens. So we had just gotten to the point in the story where she was going to talk to us about that confrontation, what it took to get to the point where she felt the courage to confront, and then how the confrontation went, kind of like that moment in that ridiculous show Intervention, right?
Yeah.
Where they have the intervention, and you know that the family is tricking this guy, and he's going to walk into the hotel room, and he's going to freak out because the whole family is there, and then they want to patronize him and be like, oh, we love you so much, that's why we're all here, because we love you. And then he goes, fuck you, man, you tricked me, I'm out, right? And you're like, no, please take this gift we're offering you today. Like, I want to know. Sorry, I just totally just ran through an entire episode of Intervention. Spoiler.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. Sometimes they go, sometimes they don't go. Sometimes they go, and then we get the little text at the end that said they left the program early and went back to using drugs, and now they're sucking dick for blow.
Boom.
Again, spoiler alert. I apologize. So what I'd like to do, now that everybody is on the show and joining us live, let's take a break. We will play our song, and then we will have Angie share with us the confrontation. So if everybody's okay, Chaz is laughing because I said, all right, now that everybody's here, let's leave. I get it. I understand why that's funny. But we've been winging it for the last hour trying to make this work. And now that everything is cool, let's play a song, take a break, take a deep breath, and Angie, you can gather your thoughts because we want to hear the confrontation. When we come back on the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast, coming to you live from RadioValencia.fm and YouTube and all around the universe, broadcasting through the deepest depths of our solar system. Who knows? Maybe even the Mars rover is listening to the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast right now. We have absolutely no idea. So, if everybody would be so kind, go ahead and hit the lovely mute buttons on your devices. We're going to play a little song, and we will return in a few minutes with the remaining hour of the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast on Radio Valencia. Enjoy. Oh, it starts out quiet. Shh. We'll be back in 4 minutes and 43 seconds, ladies and gentlemen.
Is there anyone here who can change the way my mind can see this king? Is there anyone here who can understand the lessons learned from fear? Is there anyone here with a sense of heart and thoughtless loving way? Is there anyone here who can steal my worried mind? But I realize, 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 is there anyone here who can treat a man with kindness but for keeps? Is there anyone here not about to cut loose, tired, worthless me? Is there anyone here who can get past years of silent, broken stares? Is there anyone here who can treat a troubled mind? Gonna realize, gonna realize, is there anyone here? Is there anyone here?
This is the Sober Happy Hour radio broadcast on RadioValencia.fm. Unmute, lady and gentlemen. Robinson, your hair looks very sexy this evening. It's very luscious.
I'm cutting it tomorrow. Not tomorrow, Monday. I'm getting a haircut. It's all going away.
You're going to cut it short?
I'm going to cut it short.
All right.
Not short like you or Chaz, but short like David Bowie, 1974.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
David Bowie, like circa 1990. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, like that.
Chaz has a vignette around him. That was cool. How'd you do that?
I touched it like that.
Oh,
that's neat.
Oh, that's sexy.
I like that.
Yeah, all you do, I just swipe the screen and it does that. That's neat.
Yeah.
Looks like I'm in a tunnel.
iPhones, man.
Oh, it's an iPhone thing.
I'm gonna do this now.
So Chaz is kind of going for the Bruce Willis Die Hard with a Vengeance hairdo.
No, this would be the Kiefer Sutherland in Lost Boys.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You've thought about this. I apologize.
Yeah, ever since I was a kid.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
All right, Robinson. No more dink-dink sounds.
What are you talking about?
You're making dink-dink sounds. You're trying to add apps and shit. This is how you explode things on live television. by pressing buttons you don't understand. So here we go. All right. So before the break, we were talking to Angie. Well, that's good enough. We'll say that. Yeah, we were talking to Angie before the break, before Robinson came back on the show and figured out with his fancy new icon. And what in the hell are you doing?
Just ignore me.
For anyone who is watching the broadcast on YouTube, Robinson has the Krusty the Clown effect going on. And is busting himself.
I'm messing around. I'm sorry. I'll pay attention.
That's perfectly okay. I've ignored you for years.
Yes, everyone else does too, so I'm used to it.
So what we wanted to do is, if you're just joining us, we are talking to our guest Angie. Angie has been kind enough to join the show and stay up very late with us tonight to talk about her life and her experience with drugs and alcohol on multiple sides of her existence, from parents using and abusing to her own use and potential abuse of drugs during a period in her life. And we've just gotten to the part of the story where, after a realization that her parents had been using drugs throughout her childhood, Angie got to a point where she felt, you felt, because she's still on the line with us. Hi, Angie. Where
Hi.
you felt that it was time to confront, in this case, your mother, correct?
Yeah.
So you confronted her with what she wasn't honest about at first, about a marijuana pipe that you knew was more than just a marijuana pipe. And that's when, unfortunately, we experienced some technical difficulties. So what happened when you, or I guess just finish telling the story about when you kind of forced her to admit that this was not just a pipe for smoking marijuana?
Yeah, so I took her pipe and I didn't even open the case that it was in. I just showed her and I said, "What is this?" And she said, "I'm the mother. I don't have to explain anything to my child." And I understand that, but I completely ignored it because I knew what it was. And when I asked her if it was a marijuana pipe, she said yes. And I could feel the disgust because she was lying to me, and I knew, and I had the substance in my hands, so there was no way she could say it was for weed.
And were you familiar with that particular with methamphetamine at that point in your life? Did you know what it was?
I knew what the substance was, but it was not something that I had ever experienced or even hoped to experience. The things that I was trying was like Molly and cocaine, so more or less still stimulants, but never to the degree of meth. And
Got it.
yeah, but yeah, that was the first time I had actually seen it in person. But from the way that it looked, I knew it wasn't anything that I had tried.
Right. But you were pretty convinced that it was speed. It wasn't, crack cocaine or
Right.
Got it. So
Yeah.
at what point did you decide that you weren't going to let her get away with bullshitting you about what it was and what she was doing?
Well, really, me just looking at her and her being able to feel that I could sense she was lying, she started crying and she started apologizing and she started explaining, saying, I do as much as I can and I work as hard as I can to take care of this family. And I wasn't trying to upset her. I wasn't upset about it. I was just hurt and shocked. And I didn't really feel like she owed the explanation to me. I just wanted to know that she wasn't going to do it anymore. I didn't care what the reason was. I just didn't want her to do it. And at that point, I wanted that to only be between the two of us. I didn't want cops to be involved. I didn't want my dad to be involved or any of my other family members because, she's a very independent person and she doesn't like asking for help. So for people to know that she's going through a dark time like that, that I just didn't want that for her. And unfortunately, I'm sorry?
I was going to ask, do you think that when the confrontation happened, how long do you think that this had been going on for? That she
Uh,
was using?
since I was in at least elementary school.
And
But
is that... Go ahead.
it wasn't an everyday thing. It was something that she had when she felt she needed it. And that's how she explained it to me. So I believe her in that sense because she wasn't always like that. She wasn't always expressing those mood swings and those sleeping patterns. But it was more often than not.
Would you actually experience her being up, sort of the quintessential meth user who's up for days at a time trying to work on projects around the house, and
Absolutely.
these were behaviors that she was exhibiting when you were younger?
Absolutely. She would repaint her room every week.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Wow.
she was up all the time. I mean, there would be times where I'm sleeping and I wake up in the middle of the night to get water and she's still awake in her room. And I'm looking at the clock like it's 3 a.m. Why are you still awake? And never really questioned it then, but it all made sense when I came to the realization.
I hope my kids don't ever think that I'm up being a tweaker,
I'm sure they don't.
because I have trouble sleeping, and like I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning last night making jerky, and tonight I'll be up until 3 o'clock in the morning trying to unwind after the radio show. So if when they're 20 years old they confront me about my speed habit, I'll have a good story to tell them. No, I swear to God, Jackson, I'm not using drugs. I'm just busy. Right. So you say that you believe her, and I'll be honest, I respect the hell out of you for the faith that you have, that you exhibit. Is there a part of you that struggles to believe that in actuality that maybe the problem was more significant than she's admitting to?
I do, but I try not to think about it too much because those were her choices, and from me confronting her, I wanted it to be her choice that she would stop.
And has she?
She has. And to this day, I mean, every time I go down and I visit my family, I'm so proud of my mom because she's just so different now. And she's so much happier and so much more balanced. I mean, there's still some long-term side effects of drug use, but in the long run, she's not that bipolar person that she was. And that's really incredible because even my sisters have told me that the living situation is so much better and that people aren't fighting as much, and that's revolutionary for my family.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've lived through that, and I know what life can be like when the drugs or the alcohol or the substance abuse is removed from the equation, and it can be night and day. Um, Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but more often than not, when it's an honest to goodness putting down of the substance, there really is nowhere to go but up from there. But the
Mhm.
transition itself can take a while, so I'm glad that it sounds like maybe that transition was pretty easy. Do you know if she got help after the confrontation happened, or was this something that she was able to just control on her own? Is she continuing to seek help? Does she have some sort of support there?
Yes, my grandparents are pretty involved because they've just tried to help her along the way when we were dealing with financial troubles. You know, they were there. So they know about it, and they've definitely been a good support. But she has told me that she's actually been seeing not a rehab facility, but just a therapist. And she's saying that she feels a lot better from talking with them, and that they've really helped her deal with some of her addictive personalities and addictive tendencies. So she's really learning how to not only look past the substance abuse, but to look past the traits that kind of get you to an addiction.
And I would imagine also, maybe some of the triggers that would cause the usage in the first place,
Yeah.
because as a parent, there's, you reach that point sometimes where I need to stop doing this for the sake of my kids. I have to quit this. This isn't good for me. I want to be around for my kids. I don't want my kids to see me this way. And you have all the best intentions, but then life happens, and those reasons will only take you so far. So I'm happy to hear that she's got a support system. Take us back, if you wouldn't mind. What was life like? You told a kind of a brief story about waking up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water, and mom would be up. And now looking back, that was probably her in the midst of using, some sort of a binge or something like that. What
Hmm.
what was life like? And we haven't really touched too much on your father. Was his situation similar? Was he in the same boat as your mom when they were still together?
Um, while they were together, they were both using. And shortly after they divorced, my dad was kind of out of the picture for about a year, and I wasn't quite sure why. But when we were able to get connected again, he was telling me how he's been dealing with anxiety and how he's been dealing with panic attacks. And that's also a long-term effect of using drugs, is that you have those types of anxieties, I guess. So it made sense to me because I definitely felt after I had binged on the weekends, I had high stress, high anxiety the next few days while I was coming back from that. And for him, it was completely debilitating. He couldn't go to any school functions. He couldn't go out to buy food. He was just stuck at home. And he said that he was so embarrassed and, I mean, heartbroken over the fact that they had divorced. So he was also dealing with that emotional trauma. But
Because they
yeah,
were obviously they were like high school sweethearts, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So
And
do you know if your father continued to use after they divorced?
he did not. He said that once they divorced and once they had started talking about divorce, that he just quit. He said that was one of the reasons that he wasn't sure if he could stay in the relationship, was because he wanted to quit. And she said she did, but still kept coming around to it.
Got
And
it.
that's definitely part of the illness, though, of being in an addiction.
Well, yeah, we talk about that on this show all the time. That a lot of people have the misconception that being an addict is a matter of bad decisions and lack of willpower, but your addiction becomes your best friend, the most important part of every hour of every day, and
Hmm.
it will become more important than your spouse, your job, your children, your parents, and in some cases more important than your life. It is your life. It is all encompassing. It will completely take over. And if somebody is in a relationship where their partner in using wants to get clean, um, it usually breaks one way or the other, where
Right.
they can support each other in getting clean, and sometimes they relapse together, or one person can't deal with the other person's decision and the relationship ends. Uh, and it sounds like that's what happened in your parents' situation. Um, what was it like for a young girl growing up with and I know that you haven't really made the distinction that your mother was a drug addict, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. But for all intents and purposes, it definitely sounds like she was dealing with a substance abuse problem. And where I come from, and kind of the perspective of this show is that substance abuse, regardless of what form it takes, how severe or non-severe, if you have a problem with drugs, being referred to as an addict is usually a pretty good label to put on it. So what was it like growing up, looking back, with a drug addict parent? What was that like for you?
It was very hectic. It was unpredictable. Didn't know if she was going to be in a good mood or if she was going to be in a bad mood, or if I was going to say or do something that could just set her off, and then the whole day is ruined because she blew up at me and she's just cussing and calling me all these names, and all of that mental emotional abuse that comes with that. So it was definitely high stress, and that's still something that I deal with, is trying to manage my stress. And I feel like, in a sense, there's almost a I don't know, like a barrier, or this anxiety I have. If someone starts to speak up to me a little too loud or starts to get too aggressive and they're telling me something and it feels like they're yelling at me, it almost makes me shut down. Like, just, I don't know, it's kind of hard for somebody.
Have you ever felt compelled to want to go and drink because of this?
No, never. I never turned to substances through an emotional downturn. It was more
Okay.
just for experimentation. I mean, it was still a dark time in my life, but it wasn't to escape.
Okay.
I never looked at it that way.
And just to bring you up to speed, Robinson, during the first half of the program, Angie shared that she was, I think it's safe to say, you were almost like a goody two-shoes for
Yeah.
most of your life, and that it wasn't until your late teens, getting out of high school and going into college, that you started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And
Yeah.
I find that very interesting because I've definitely talked to a lot of people who have had addict or alcoholic parents who sort of instinctively stayed away from drugs and alcohol throughout most of their childhood, because they were afraid of it, because they knew, even if they didn't know that they knew how destructive that behavior could be. And unfortunately, those same people often find themselves wrapped up in their own addictions and substance abuse problems later in life, and they kind of follow in those footsteps. It sounds like you were able to make that decision, and it actually helped shed light on the fact that there was something going on with your parents. And if it hadn't been for that decision that you made to start experimenting with drugs and alcohol, you may not have ever realized that there was something going on.
Exactly. And I'm very thankful and grateful for the experiences I had and the fact that I survived and that I don't have any long-term effects, well, as far as I know. And I'm also grateful for the fact that I was able to see that side and realize that my mom was going through that. And me confronting her is what changed her life,
Right.
what got her out of that. And if it wouldn't have been, like, I remember being in high school, straight A student, I'm in every single club, I'm in sports, I'm doing volunteer service, just not really someone you would expect to get into things like that. And senior year came around, and I was just so well known for being a good kid that I just kind of started ditching school whenever I wanted, and nobody said anything to me because they thought I was just doing volunteer work or something. It was kind of awesome.
Sure.
You built up some established credit.
Exactly.
That's kind of
And
cool.
Yeah, right? And nobody ever found out. My grades never slipped. I still maintained my above 4.0 GPA and graduated it in the top 2 of my class. Um, that was really cool. Oh gosh, totally forgot where I was going with this.
Well, and all the while, and what I love about that side of the story is that it proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that a child in a situation like yours can still come out on top, right? And I think so often people who have made bad decisions starting kind of earlier in their life, they look for excuses, they look for people to blame, right? Even when I was struggling with my own addictions, I found my mother trying to put the responsibility of my substance abuse on herself, trying to take the blame for my life being in a downward spiral because she divorced my father and I was moved around a lot and my life was stressful and hectic and crazy, and I didn't have a lot of parental supervision as I was going through my adolescence. And she at certain points when I was still making the decision to get sober, she would literally try to take responsibility for it and take the responsibility away from me. And I had to tell her that she was being ridiculous. Like, that's absolutely not true. You and my father divorcing when I was 12 years old did not make me a drug addict when I was 21. Like, that was not, one was not the result of the other. And and
I
you
don't.
are
I don't think any of the stuff that happened to you in your growing up was. They weren't bad things. They were good lessons. They were negative, but they were good lessons. I think you learned a lot from everything that happened. I think it came out to your advantage that your mother divorced your father and that
absolutely.
you had to go through all that. You know.
Well, and I think that had I started using drugs at that time,
that would have been a whole nother story.
That's a different story, right? And same with you, Angie. If you had started using drugs, when your parents split up and when things were hard for you and you were dealing with, all of the stress and drama of your mother and her drug use, then we'd be telling a different story right now. But I have an interesting question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think would be going on right now, essentially, if it hadn't been for that experimental phase that you went through where you were using drugs and alcohol to make the realization that your mother had a problem? Do you think she would have ever figured this out on her own?
Honestly, I don't, because she's still working jobs that are long hours, 12-hour shifts, but she's not working as much, but those are still pretty long shifts. So I feel like if it wouldn't have been for how she described it as public humiliation, if it wouldn't have been for that, I think she would still be caught up in it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How differently do you think things would have been if she had not ever hidden anything from you and just said, from the very beginning, this is what I do, instead of letting you think that it's just for smoking pot or something? How do you think that you would have grown up differently if you knew that she just had been smoking shit all the time and you knew exactly what it was?
That's a great question, and that's something that I've thought about a lot. And I think that I'm not really sure how to answer it.
Do you think it would have changed the outcome of your earlier life? Do you think that your relationship with your mother was such that you
I I don't think I would have been able to respect her growing up. I
Got it.
think I would have become more rebellious and I wouldn't have felt the need to be as responsible for my sisters as I was because the way that I was looking at it was I'm helping support my sisters. My mom's working as hard as she can. She can only do so much. I can help with my sisters and making dinner and things like that. But if I would have known all this time that that's what she was doing, I probably would have said something to my other family members because I was really young and I shouldn't have to try to raise kids
Yeah,
at the
you
same
would have been
time.
resentful.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Do you think it would have led you to try to join her?
I don't. I
Because
think
I've seen that happen. I've seen it happen in many cases where the parents are doing drugs. They let the kids know at a young age, and then the kid, usually at around 13 or 14, the kids start doing it. The mom or the parents can't say shit because,
yeah.
and then the whole family's addicted. I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
My personal experience was I got to live with my father and stepmother um, at an early age, like when I was 11 or 12, yeah, 11 years old. I got to go there for a year, and they had everything out. They had pot, coke, heroin, speed. Everything was out all the time. They did drugs. None of them were addicted to it, but they just had it out. They partied. When I asked what it was, they explained it to me, and they said,
Wow.
when you're an adult, if you want to try it, then you do it as an adult, but don't do it until you really feel comfortable in your own skin and knowing who you are. So I never had any interest in trying it. I stayed up late nights as a child with my stepmother, who was also a stripper. And she would, after the club would close at 2 o'clock in the morning, she and some of the other stripper girls and some of the guys, the doorman or whatever, they'd come over to the house and play poker and do lines of coke until 6 a.m., which is, and me being naturally hyperactive, I would just go and play poker with them, and until it was time to go to school.
Wow.
And yeah, it was just all normal
There we go.
stuff. I asked my stepmother one day
A little bit
why
of an issue here with the audio.
with my audio.
I think we cut out there for a moment. So let me restart Chrome real quick. Say something real fast, Robinson.
Okay, I don't want to say
Still
anything.
having a problem. Let me
Okay.
stop you for just 1 second and I'll restart
All
the
right.
hangout. I apologize.
All right.
Be right back.
Thank you. Are the rest of us still on?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh.
still here.
Okay, so he's the only one who's having problems. Um, yeah, there was one time where this guy who was a doorman, while we were playing poker, I noticed that he kept staring at me a lot, and I'm like 11 years old. And I asked my stepmother why he stared at me, and she said, well, he's gay and he likes little boys, but don't worry, he's not going to bother you. And so it didn't bother me, and I just continued to be friends with him and didn't mind him staring at me. So everybody was just very open with everything in my life. There were no secrets.
Wow.
Huh. And I never touched any drugs until I was like in my 40s. I never drank. I never went to a bar and sat at a bar and drank a beer until I was in my 40s. I mean, I had a
Yeah.
beer occasionally at home, but that was about it.
It clears up the weird audio issues.
Oh, that's
Are you
good.
there?
We're all here.
Yeah,
We've been carrying on without you.
I know, but unfortunately, on the Radio Valencia side, they can still hear you guys on YouTube,
On
but
YouTube,
not
Radio
through
Valencia
Radio
not.
Valencia, and the
That's
audio is
interesting.
still messed up. Chaz, can you unmute yourself and say something real fast?
Something real fast.
Yeah, we're still having some problems here on this end. Where I'm gonna stop the broadcast, the YouTube broadcast. So hold tight for just a second, guys, and we're going to completely restart the broadcast. So it will end the call that we're currently on. as Chaz changes his filters and looks fancy.
I have filters. Wow.
I know. We will be right back on YouTube and Radio Valencia. Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. And I will resend the invite to everybody, so just go ahead and click on it in a moment, and we should be right back.